The head of Libya's UN-backed unity government has called for urgent talks. That's after forces loyal to rebel commander Khalifa Haftar have seized 4 key oil ports in the country's so-called oil crescent. It's a major blow to the Tripoli administration, which depends almost entirely on oil revenues from its income. The UN envoy to Libya, Martin Kobler, has appealed to an end to the fighting. But Haftar and his troops remain defiant. In a statement, Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj says, and I quote, "I call on all sides to halt provocative actions and sit down urgently at the same table to discuss a mechanism that would enable us to get out of this crisis and put a stop to the conflict. I am not prepared to rule one part of Libya, nor to lead a war against another part," end quote. Let's get you more on what's happening now in Libya. I'm joined live on the line. I'm joined on the line now from the city of Sirte by Stephanie Fried. Stephanie, there's all this concern about possible civil war in Libya. You've spent some time there now. How likely do you think war is at this stage?
Well, on some level, Beatrice, the country is already on some level at war with itself. You have the countries divided by 3, the center part, the east, the west, and those sections try to get along, but not really. And there are different controlling factions within each of those areas, governing factions within each of those areas. Now, the UN-backed government is in Tripoli. There's an attempt to have some cohesion between the sides. However, that attempt is not necessarily working. And now, with this grab of the oil fields, with the fact that since the 2011 war, Libya's oil production has dropped to a quarter of what it used to be, the economy here is depressed. The conditions are absolutely ripe for things to spiral downward into further escalation into, yes, an all-out civil war. Obviously, as you said, the Prime Minister is trying to control that, he's saying he doesn't want to fight against his own people. But the question is, what's going to happen with the oil refineries? What's going to happen with taking back control and also with exports?
Stephanie, what's the latest, though, on the battle for Sirte? Are we any closer now to seeing the city liberated from ISIL?
Well, we're just now at the end of the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha, and there has been much speculation that after Wednesday, Thursday, heading into the weekend, perhaps the final surge to take the remaining 10% of Sirte that's under control of ISIL, that will go forward. Now the question is, what will happen with the fighters who are now in Sirte? Will they be reassigned or redistributed to the oil refineries that have been taken over? Also, there is some concern. I've talked with some commanders in Sirte. There is some concern that some of the ISIL people who escaped, they saw clippings of their beards, of their hair, remnants that they had basically tried to disguise themselves. They escaped from Sirte, that perhaps they're hiding out, and they may flank the front lines of Libyan fighters from behind and a counterattack. Right now, they say there's 10% left, and the surge forward to capture the rest of Sirte by Libyan fighters should be, as they say here, any day now.
Stephanie Fried there for us in Libya. Well, these developments are being closely watched by the region. CCTV's Yasser Hakim is joining us live now from Cairo for more on that. Yasser, any response yet from the Egyptian government on General Haftar seizing all these oil installations?
No, the government has kept quiet since the initial response, which was quite short, saying that it's closely monitoring the situation in Libya and calling for all political factions or parties to unite for peace in Libya. Furthermore, we have not seen any official reaction from the government afterwards.
Well, yes, how much longer, though, can Egypt afford to support General Haftar? Do we know?
Now, Haftar for Egypt is someone that Egypt has supported from the beginning, because he was the first to rise and reunite the army that was dismantled after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. And then he was also the first to fight the Islamist militants in Libya more than a year ago before the attacks on ISIL. And that's why the Egyptian government has been backing him and seeing him as the legitimate army for Libya. He's also representing the UN internationally recognized parliament. And you have the internationally recognized government, and the internationally recognized parliament did not approve the government. And that's why the Libyans are looking for a new government now, trying to form a new government. So in this whole process, it's very hard to decide, and Egypt has kept itself at this point quite as neutral as possible, although it has been always calling for arms and support, and has been supporting the army of Haftar, knowing that his stance is quite possible to be the best in coordinating with the Egyptian army to fight off any militant insurgency. And Haftar himself says that he does not accept the coalition government because the coalition government is predominantly Islamist, and the Islamist factions and forces have lost the latest elections, and therefore they should not be a majority representation in the coalition government and in the presidential council. That's the same stance of the internationally backed parliament. So the only solution to this is that a new coalition government would be formed by the presidential council that will be more anti-Islamist, if you want to say, or has a more leverage to not the Islamist forces, but to moderate and non-Islamist forces. And that's, at this point, can be accepted from the other side, which is the parliament and Khalifa Haftar.
Well, yes, what exactly, though, can we expect in coming days from the Egyptian government when it comes to trying to end this latest crisis?
Yes, Egypt started by supporting Haftar and the Athini, who's the prime minister of the parliament in the east, but in the west. But at this point, later on, it took a neutral role, and it started and it also supported the coalition government and Fayez Sarraj, the head of the presidential council. And now it has been also hosting all the political factions in Libya in the last few months. Fayez Sarraj has come to Egypt more than 4 or 5 times in the last 2 months. Khalifa Haftar was in Egypt as well. The head of the parliament was in Egypt. And I think what Egypt is doing behind closed doors is trying to force some kind of deal that will be applicable to all, or accepted by all sides, and probably trying to forge out with the Libyan with the Libyan officials some kind of a coalition government with names that would be accepted from both sides, and that will help accept a unity between the army. You have the army by Khalifa Haftar, and you have the other army that's led by Fayez Sarraj. And if one coalition government is accepted by both, then maybe you can merge both armies into one national Libyan army that would represent Libya and of course control all the security situation in Libya, including the oil refineries at this point, under a legitimate government. And I think this is what Egypt is working on.
Right, Yasser Hakim for us there in Cairo.